imagine holding this official government file in your hands. You look at it, and it bears this very official Catawba County seal.
Right, the one with the cross and the torch. Yeah.
Exactly. The cross, a torch, a cow, and a wagon wheel from, like, 1842. And the document explicitly states, quote, no evidence of maltreatment or child safety issues found.
Which looks like absolute objective proof of a functioning system.
Yeah, it really does. But what if that exact piece of paper is actually, the blueprint of a fatal systemic failure?
Oh, it is. It absolutely is.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission for you today is to unpack the truly devastating case of 10-year-old Zahra Baker.
It is such a heavy topic, but so important.
And that very official Catawba County Department of Health and Human Services press release.
Right, and we're basically looking at a landscape where the paperwork completely contradicted the reality of what was happening behind closed doors.
Completely. So to really understand the magnitude of that institutional failure, I mean, we have to establish who Zahra was before she became just another case file.
Yeah, absolutely. Zahra was, by all accounts, an incredibly vibrant, resilient child. She was born in Wagga Wagga, Australia, in November 1999.
Wagga Wagga. So she started out literally on the other side of the planet.
Exactly. And her early life was defined by a really brutal medical battle. She survived bone cancer when she was just 5 years old.
Oh, wow. 5 years old?
Yeah. And the aggressive treatment, it resulted in the amputation of her left leg above the knee. And on top of that, the chemotherapy caused significant hearing loss.
So she was dealing with a lot.
Oh, a ton.
Yeah.
She relied on a prosthetic leg and hearing aids in both ears. But despite facing that level of physical trauma, the people who actually knew her back in Australia described her as bubbly, brave, and just constantly smiling.
That is amazing. She sounds so incredibly strong.
She really was. She had communities actively rallying around her, raising money for a specialized wheelchair.
Yeah.
And she was actually known for lifting the spirits of other children at cancer camps.
Which gives us this beautiful picture of early resilience. She's surrounded by this supportive community. So I guess the big question is, how does a child go from that safe environment in Australia to a total nightmare in Hickory, North Carolina?
Well, the catalyst is really the way the adults in her life connected. Zahra's father, Adam Baker, he met an American woman named Elisa online.
Okay, online.
Yeah, and he just packed up his disabled daughter, moved across the globe in 2008, and relocated to the United States.
Which is a massive move, just totally uprooting her life.
Exactly. And the context of that move is crucial here. The sources indicate Adam reportedly believed that Elisa had money and that she could help pay for Zahra's significant ongoing medical bills.
Wait, but wasn't her medical care already covered back in Australia?
Yes. That is the wild part. Her specialized medical care had been provided for free under the healthcare system back home.
That is an almost inexplicable shift then. He uprooted his daughter to move in with a woman he essentially only knew through a screen.
Right, and the woman on that screen was, well, an entirely fictional construct.
Of course she was. What did the sources say about her online presence?
The true crime sources detail Elisa's online persona in pretty stark terms. She operated under the username Gothic Fairy 66666.
Wow, Gothic Fairy 66666, that's quite the handle.
It gets weirder. She listed her hometown as Never Neverland. She literally listed her mood as crazy.
Okay, so a lot of red flags right out of the gate.
Oh, definitely. And she wove these highly elaborate, manipulative stories, like claiming she was a bounty hunter or a police officer who had been shot in the line of duty.
So this wasn't just innocent internet roleplay.
No, not at all. It was a very calculated strategy to project an exciting, dangerous past. And it completely masked her actual reality, which was basically bouncing between dozens of addresses, dodging bill collectors.
And didn't she have a history with her own kids, too?
Yes. She was harboring a documented history of violence and abuse with her own biological children.
See, there's one detail from her MySpace page that genuinely made my stomach drop when I read it.
The photo.
Yes. Amidst all the fake bravado and the fabricated persona, she posted a photo of Zahra, and the caption she typed underneath it was, quote, "The dark child."
Yeah.
Lol.
Yeah, that is incredibly chilling.
I mean, she didn't view this incredibly vulnerable little girl as a daughter to care for. She viewed her as a prop in her dark fantasy world.
Exactly. She was just playing a character.
We talk about the dangers of catfishing all the time, right?
Yeah.
But usually the mechanism of a catfish involves a broken heart or, a drained bank account.
Right, usually financial or emotional damage.
Exactly. But here it's like the internet functioned as a physical trapdoor. It literally relocated a highly vulnerable child out of a safe, supportive jurisdiction with free health care.
And just dropped her directly into a chaotic, dangerous, alternate reality controlled by a serial manipulator.
Exactly. And because Elisa's entire life was built on that deception, maintaining the illusion in the real world required absolute control.
Right. Because if Zara is out in the community, interacting normally with neighbors or teachers, the reality of Elisa's abuse is instantly exposed.
So isolation became her primary tool of enforcement.
Precisely. And the conditions of that isolation, as reported by neighbors and relatives in these sources, are just horrifying.
What were they saying was going on?
Well, they reported that Zara was frequently locked in her room. She was allegedly only allowed 5 minutes a day to eat.
5 minutes. That is essentially starvation.
Yeah, and she was punished severely for the most minor infractions. One former neighbor even reported that Elisa told her she tried to spank Zara, but hit her on her prosthetic leg instead.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and she complained that it caused her own hand to swell up.
That is just, I don't even have words for that. But even with that extreme isolation, the abuse was still leaking out into the public eye, right?
It was. Zara was frequently showing up to school with black eyes.
And it happened so consistently that two concerned teachers actually took it upon themselves to physically visit the Baker home to investigate what was going on.
Which is really going above and beyond for a teacher.
Right. And this is where I am just stuck. If teachers are physically showing up at the house, and relatives, including Elisa's own ex-husband, right?
Yes, even her ex-husband.
If they are all calling in reports, where are the authorities? I mean, how does a child with constant black eyes not trigger an immediate, overwhelming state intervention?
Well, the tragic reality is that the safety net specifically designed to catch this abuse completely failed.
How so? Like, what does the official record show?
According to the Catawba County Department of Health and Human Services official timeline, in 2010 alone, Child Protective Services across both Caldwell and Catawba counties looked into the Baker family 7 different times.
Wait, 7 separate investigations in less than a year?
Yes, 7. The press release details one specific unannounced visit on July 13th. The agency arrived at 6:18 p.m. while the family was literally unpacking boxes in their new home in Hickory.
Okay, so they caught them completely off guard.
Exactly. They interviewed the stepmother, the father, and Zara independently. They followed up on July 22nd and August 5th.
And then what?
On August 6th, they officially closed the case, stating there was no evidence of maltreatment.
Okay, wait, I need to push back on this. They show up unannounced. They interview everyone independently. How does a manipulator like Elisa beat a divided interrogation?
It is incredibly frustrating, I know.
I mean, what is the actual mechanism she used to convince a trained social worker that a child with multiple black eyes is perfectly safe?
The mechanism of failure here is the siloed nature of the child welfare system at that time. You really have to look at how investigations were structured in 2010.
So they weren't communicating with each other.
Right. There was a fatal lack of centralized communication. When investigators knocked on that door, they were evaluating a single snapshot in time. It was completely disconnected from the broader context.
So they didn't see the whole puzzle.
Exactly. The State Child Fatality Review later noted that critical pieces of information were entirely missing. Investigators didn't photograph the injuries to establish a record.
Wow. No photos at all.
No photos. They didn't verify the prescription drug usage in the home. And school records, pediatricians, and local law enforcement, they were not sharing their data across county lines.
So when Elisa offered a semi-plausible excuse, like claiming that Zara was just clumsy because of her prosthetic leg and had fallen into a sink.
Right. The investigators, who were operating without the larger pattern of abuse, just accepted it.
They investigated the paperwork, not the child. They essentially took the manipulator at her word because the system didn't give them tools to cross-reference her lies.
That is exactly what happened.
And that pattern, that habit of authorities accepting Elisa and Adam's version of reality, it culminated on the morning of October 9th, 2010, right?
Yes, that is the day the entire illusion of their household finally shattered.
And the timeline is incredibly bizarre. From the sources, around 5:00 a.m., a fire is reported in the backyard of the Baker's home.
Specifically, it was a mulch and wood pile.
Right. Responders arrive, they extinguish it. But then a ransom note is found taped to the windshield of Adam's company vehicle. A Chevy Tahoe.
And the contents of that ransom note reveal the deeply theatrical nature of the cover-up. It wasn't your standard demand.
No, it was weirdly specific.
Very. It was addressed to Mr. Coffey, who was Adam's boss and landlord. The note demanded $1 million in unmarked bills for the boss's daughter.
Wait, the boss's daughter, not Zahra.
Right. And it specifically threatened the boss's, quote, pot-smoking redhead son.
I mean, that is just wild.
It was a highly calculated, albeit chaotic, misdirection. It was designed by a predator trying to exploit police protocols. She wanted investigators looking at the boss's family, not hers.
Which is just diabolical.
Which,
But the most baffling part of that morning is Adam's reaction to all of this. His backyard is on fire. There's a deranged ransom note on the car he drives, but it takes him until 5:30 a.m. to call 911.
right, and after the fire department has already been there and left.
Yes, to report his own daughter missing. And he claims to the dispatchers that he thought the kidnappers must have taken Zahra by mistake, thinking she was the boss's daughter.
Which is convenient,
Mm.
but the red flags on that 911 call are massive. Adam was reportedly laughing and joking on the call.
Laughing while reporting his daughter kidnapped.
Yes. He told the dispatcher he hadn't checked on Zahra since 2:30 a.m. because she was in her brooding stage of puberty, so they rarely saw her unless she wanted something.
That statement is chilling, especially when you realize we are talking about a 10-year-old disabled child who is actively being locked in her room and starved.
Absolutely. But the real unraveling of their story came directly from the cell phone records.
The digital footprint.
Exactly. It exposed the massive gap between the story they told and the physical reality. The cell records revealed that Elisa had been texting Adam for 2 weeks as if Zahra were still alive.
Wow, so she was constructing a fake digital reality.
Yep. Leaving a paper trail of concern and normal parenting, because nobody outside that family had laid eyes on Zahra since late September.
Okay, if you are listening to this, you might be wondering the exact same thing I am. If Elisa successfully hid a horrific crime for 2 weeks by keeping things quiet, why on earth would she draw maximum attention to herself by lighting a backyard fire and planting an elaborate ransom note?
It seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah. I mean, doesn't her need to control the narrative essentially set the trap for her own arrest?
It does. And the psychology of the manipulator often includes an inherent overestimation of their own intelligence.
She thought she was untouchable.
Exactly. Elisa had successfully lied her way out of 7 different CPS investigations. She believed she could outsmart the system again. The fire and the note were meant to be a smokescreen.
But the stress of concealing a murder caused her to overplay her hand.
Right. Instead of misdirection, her theatrical actions drew the immediate, intense scrutiny of local police, the FBI, and eventually the national media.
And once that level of forensic resources was deployed, the illusion just crashed down instantly.
Because physical evidence cannot be erased by a fabricated story.
Exactly. When investigators brought in cadaver dogs, they bypassed the ransom note entirely and immediately hit on both Adam's Chevy Tahoe and Elisa's Toyota Camry.
And that is when the search instantly shifted from a missing child case to a homicide investigation.
Right. And then the cell phone pings from the day Zahra actually died placed Elisa near what police described as illicit dump areas in rural Caldwell County.
Yeah, these locations were overgrown, mountainous, deeply isolated areas. Historically, it's where people dumped animal carcasses.
So searching them was like looking for a needle in a haystack.
It was incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
But they did eventually recover parts of Zahra. They found her prosthetic leg, and they positively matched it using the specific serial number from her medical records in Australia.
But they only found a fraction of her remains initially, right?
Sadly, yes. Her skull wouldn't be discovered by hunters until 2012, nearly 2 years later.
2 years later. That is heartbreaking.
It is. And the dismemberment and the incomplete recovery of the body created a massive, almost insurmountable hurdle for the legal system.
Because the legal system isn't really a justice engine, right? It's a math equation.
It's a good way to put it.
First-degree murder requires proving both intent and the specific mechanism of death. Because they lacked the complete body, the medical examiner's hands were completely tied.
Right. The official autopsy report had to list the cause of death as undetermined homicidal violence.
Which means they knew she was murdered, but they couldn't scientifically prove the mechanism. And if you leave the mechanism variable blank in a courtroom...
A defense attorney will exploit it immediately.
Exactly. So District Attorney Jay Gaither was forced into a highly precarious calculation.
He was. He openly admitted in a press conference that without Zahra Baker's cooperation, without her actively leading them to some of those hidden dump sites, They might never have found Zahra's remains at all.
So taking Elisa to trial for first-degree murder on a totally circumstantial case with an undetermined cause of death, that carried a real risk.
A very real risk of an acquittal. A defense lawyer could argue that Zahra died of an accidental fall or a sudden medical event, and that the parents just panicked and dismembered the body post-mortem.
And desecrating a corpse is a crime, but it isn't murder.
Exactly. If a jury bought that narrative, Elisa could have walked free of the homicide charge entirely,
So they couldn't risk the trial. They had to settle for a partial picture of justice.
which led to the plea deal. Elisa Baker pleaded guilty to second-degree murder with an aggravating factor of desecrating a body.
And she got, what, 15 to 18 years?
Yes, 15 to 18 years in prison for the murder, alongside additional time for a slew of unrelated charges like bigamy, identity fraud, and later on some federal drug charges.
Now, if you were wondering how a father could live in a tiny 900-square-foot house and not know his disabled daughter was missing or dead for 2 weeks.
Trust me, the whole town of Hickory was screaming that exact same question.
Right. But the frustrating reality of criminal thresholds meant Adam Baker was never officially charged with the murder.
No. The DA stated they simply had no credible forensic evidence linking him directly to the killing. He faced some unrelated fraud charges, and then he was quietly deported back to Australia amid intense community outrage.
Which makes the justice achieved in this case feel deeply transactional. It was constrained by the brutal realities of forensic evidence and the necessary evils of plea bargaining.
It was. However, the sheer public outrage over those 7 failed CPS visits did force a massive reckoning within the state's bureaucracy.
Something had to change.
Right. It directly led to the creation of the Zahra Project. This initiative was specifically designed to fix those fatal communication gaps, forcing social services, school districts, and law enforcement agencies to integrate their data.
So they would stop operating in isolated silos.
Exactly.
And on the legal side, DA Jay Gaither pushed for and successfully helped pass a new North Carolina state law.
Right, the dismemberment statute.
Yeah. It is now a specific felony to dismember or desecrate a human body to conceal it from police, and that charge adds significant mandatory extra prison time to a sentence.
And Gaither explicitly acknowledged that a harsher penalty wouldn't have deterred a psychological manipulator like Elisa.
No, probably not. But it finally provides prosecutors with the specific tool they lacked to punish that heinous act in the future. We learn from the darkest systemic failures, and we update the code.
We update the code, we mandate cross-county data sharing, and we increase statutory minimums. But all of these systemic upgrades share one fundamental limitation.
And what's that?
They are inherently reactive. A social worker's updated database, a new state felony statute, a sophisticated police protocol, all of those mechanisms only step in after the damage is already done.
That is a really sobering point, and it's why Zahra's case forces us to ask a deeply uncomfortable question about our own reality and our own neighborhoods.
It really does.
When the official systems we rely on are blinded by a manipulator's lies, when the county paperwork literally has a stamp that says everything is fine, what is our personal responsibility to look past the front door of the house next to ours and simply refuse to look away?